This video will cover integer operations starting with adding and subtracting real numbers. Within adding and subtracting, there are several different scenarios you need to keep straight. The easiest one to look at first is a negative plus a negative. What you'll do is add the numbers and keep the negative sign. And I suggest on all of these integer problems that you write your sign down first before you do the arithmetic. So a negative plus a negative is pretty simple. All you have to do is add and keep the negative sign. So negative 5 plus negative 2, I'm going to keep that negative sign, add those two numbers together, and get 7. Now there's several different ways I can explain to you why it works out this way. The first is to look at a number line. When you look at a problem like this on a number line, this first number right here is where you start. So we're sitting here on negative 5. This sign right here in the middle is the direction you're going to move. A positive tells you you're going to move to the right. And then this number here is how many spaces you're going to move. So negative 5 plus says, okay, I'm going to start to move to the right, but this right here says you're going to add negative 2. That negative in front of the 2 tells you to go the opposite direction. So instead of going to the right, I'm going to go back to the left 2, which lands at negative 7. Now you might not like the number line scenario, so here's some other things to look at that might make better sense to you. Think about it in real world terms. Negative 5 plus negative 2 is the idea that you lost 5 pounds and then you lost 2 more. That means you have a total loss of 7 pounds. A total, that's the adding, loss, that's the minus sign in front. Or perhaps you owe somebody $5, that's the negative 5 to begin with, and then you borrow $2 more, that's the minus 2. You have a total, that's the 7, debt, which is the negative that's in front. Or maybe if you're a scuba diver, you've gone 5 feet below sea level, that's the negative 5, and then you go 2 feet more below sea level, that's going to be a total of 7 feet below sea level. Total, again, is the idea of adding the negative. For you football players out there, you have lost 5 yards on one play, that's the negative 5, and then you lose 2 more yards, that's going to give you a total loss of 7 yards. So whatever of those makes better sense to you, think about that as you're doing these problems. But a negative plus a negative is going to stay negative, and then we're going to add. So a negative plus a negative would be negative. Write that negative down. Add 8 plus 10 is 18. A negative 12 plus a negative 30 stays negative. Add those together, you get 42. A negative plus a negative stays negative, and we add. A negative plus a negative stays negative. We add, get 18. A negative plus a negative, we add, and get negative 15. Now it looks like I've thrown you a curve here, but I'm leading to something. This is plain old 8 plus 3, but you can think about this being a positive 8 plus a positive 3 is a positive 11. Not that you have to write that positive, but the reason I'm giving you that problem right there is that what you're dealing with is this idea right here. If you are adding the same signs, you're going to take the sum. See, these are the same signs. These are both positive, so we do the sum. Another way to look at these is to look at like little poker chips where red stands for negative. So this is this problem right up here modeled out. This is negative 5. That's 5 poker chips, which is like each poker chip is owing $1 plus 2 more of these reds gives me a total of 7 reds. That's why the rule is what it is. So next scenario is a little more complicated. This is either a negative plus a positive, like this, a negative plus a positive, or a positive plus a negative. See, the order doesn't matter. The rule for this is keep the sign of the larger and subtract. Keep the sign of the larger and subtract. And instead of us saying same signs sum, we're now thinking different signs difference. And if you know what the word difference means, that's telling you when you see different signs, that means you're going to subtract, not add these numbers together. This is not any kind of 9. This is a negative 6 plus 3. We are going to keep the sign of the larger. So the bigger number is 6. It has a negative sign on it. And then we're going to subtract these. And what we mean by subtract is just subtract plain old 3 from plain old 6, which gives us 3. Same problem in a different order here is find the bigger number, which is 6. The sign is negative. Subtract 3 from 6, and we get negative 3. The reason the answer is the same is that this is the same problem. So think about our scenarios. This is -6 would stand for you've lost 6 pounds, and then the next month you gained 3 pounds. You end up with a net loss of 3 pounds. Or you owe $6, you get paid $3, so you're going to pay back whoever you owe, so now you only owe $3. Or you lost 6 yards on a football player, you lost 6 yards, so you're going backwards 6, but then you're going forward 3, so now you're only 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And we can look at this with these little discs. Now we need to understand that the red discs are negatives, and the black discs mean you have that money. And a red disc and a black disc will cancel each other out. So -6 plus 3, there's our red, 6 of our reds. We're going to add to that 3 of our blacks, keeping in mind that a red and a black will cancel out. So that red and that black cancel out. That red and that black cancels out. That red and that black cancels out. And what are you left with? All red, specifically 3 of those reds, giving us -3. Or look at the number line. -6 is we're starting at -6. The plus tells us to go to the right, and the 3 tells me to go to the right 3 spaces. So 1, 2, 3. So some people understand the number line best, but the only problem with relying totally on the number line is if the numbers get pretty large, or if you're dealing with fractions, the number line's not going to help you. So you do need to know these rules. Here's another one that we can look at with the number line and with the discs. This is just a teeny bit different than the last one because this first number happens to be positive. So this is a +2. This right here would tell me to start going to the right, but this is -4. That -4 translates to the opposite of 4. So instead of going to the right 4, I need to go backwards to the left 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, which lands at -2. Look at this in terms of the rule. 2 plus -4. 4 is bigger, it has a negative sign on it, and then subtract 2 from 4, which is 2. In terms of our discs, this is 2 plus a -4. So that cancels with that cancels with that. What we're left with is 2 reds, which is 2 negative. The whole idea on the disc is to help you understand why we keep the sign of the larger. If we go through this canceling stuff out, you're going to be left with, in this case, more red because they were more red to begin with. Back on the last screen, when we did this, same thing, we were left with more red because they were more red to begin with. That's why you keep the sign of the larger. So let's do a little mixture. You could stop the video right here and see if you can get these answers correct on your own. -10 plus 14, we're going to keep the sign of the larger. 14 is bigger, so this is positive. And then subtract 10 from 14, which is 4. And no, you don't have to keep the plus. You could drop that off. I'm just emphasizing decide on your sign first. -6 plus 3, 6 is bigger. It has a negative sign on it. Subtract 3 from 6 is 3. -10 plus 4, the 10 is bigger. My answer will be negative. Subtract 4 from 10 is 6. -8 plus 14, in this case the 14 is bigger. It has a plus, so this is a positive. Subtract 8 from 14 is 6. -6 plus 24, 24 is larger. It is positive, so my answer will be positive. And -6 plus 24 is 18. Again, you don't have to have the positive sign. This is just 4. This is just 6. This is just 18. So if you're entering answers in Math Lab, you don't enter the positive, you just enter those numbers. 18 plus -6, the 18 is larger, so our answer will be positive. 6 from 18 is 12, and then of course this is just plain old 12. 10 plus a -20, the 20 is bigger, it has a negative sign on it. Subtract 10 from 20 is 10. 54 plus -70, the bigger number is 70, it is negative. Now all these other ones you maybe could do the arithmetic in your head, but with this, if you have to do bigger numbers, you might have to go over to the side and set up your column arithmetic. If you're going to subtract in column format, you need to be sure you put the bigger number on top. So 70 minus 54, and then you're going to have to borrow. So this becomes a 10, 4 from 10 is 6, 5 from 6 is 1. So this is a -16. -8 plus 8, this is kind of strange in terms of deciding on your sign first. Neither one of them is larger, and that's the dead giveaway that this is going to be 0. And the reason it's 0 is think about our discs. You have 8 red discs laid out, 8 positive or 8 black discs. They cancel all, each one gets canceled out, which gives us 0. 10 plus negative 8, 10 is bigger, it is positive. Subtract 10 from 8 is 2, which leaves us with a 2. Now, subtracting can be a little bit more complicated because we don't really have rules for subtracting. What we do with subtracting is we want to get this problem manipulated so that it follows our addition rules. That way we're using new rules. So, follow the number line. Negative 2 says I'm starting at negative 2. The minus tells me to go left 3. 1, 2, 3, which lands at negative 5. Well, another problem very similar to this that would have landed at negative 5 is this. Negative 2 plus negative 3 also gives us negative 5. These two problems are equal to each other because subtracting 3 is the same as adding a negative 3. And that's what we want to do when we see a solitary minus. When you see a minus in between the numbers like that, you need to think keep, change, change. And what that means is keep the first number as is. It was negative 2. I kept it. Change that sign. That used to be a minus sign. I'm changing it to plus. Change that. That used to be a plain old 3. I need to change it to negative 3. And that's how we end up with negative 2 plus negative 3 is going to be negative 5. And the reason this is nice is this fits our addition rule. Our addition rule says when I'm adding both negative, I keep the negative sign and add. So keep in mind, keep, change, change on all of these. All of these are subtraction problems. We have a minus in the middle here. So I'm going to change this to plus a negative. 3 plus negative 5. That's our rule from a couple minutes ago. The 5 is bigger, so I'm going to keep the negative sign and subtract. 3 from 5 is 2. Change that. Keep, change, change. 6 plus negative 10. 10 is bigger, so I keep the negative sign. 6 from 10 is 4. Now, some of you older students might have learned this way, and this is the way I learned it, and there's nothing wrong with this. 3 minus 5, what we were taught was you can't take 5 from 3, so that means your answer automatically will be negative. And then in your head, you just switch the problem around to be 5 minus 3, which is 2. See, same answer. But that doesn't work so well when you start with a number that's negative. That's why we teach this plus negative. So keep the negative 6, change this, make this negative. Now this is a different rule than these last two. These are both negative. We keep the negative sign and we add. That's negative 14. Remember, same signs sum. Back here, these were different signs. That's why we took the difference. All right, so keep, change, change. This is 8 plus negative 20. Those are different signs. I keep the sign of the larger, and I subtract. 8 from 20 is 12. Keep, change, change. These are both negative, so automatically the sign is negative. I don't have to think about that. And then I add. A negative 8 plus negative 10 is negative 18. Keep, change, change. Those are both negative. Automatically the answer is negative. Add. 2 plus 3 is 5. All right, now I have two minuses in a row, and I can still think about the number line in terms of negative 4 is where I start. The minus would tell me to start to the left, but this right here, the minus 10 says go in the opposite direction. So instead of going left, I need to go right 10 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I land on 6. So negative 4 minus negative 10 is equal to positive 6. But I can still do my keep, change, change, which helps me to avoid the number line. Keep that, change that, that means it goes to a plus. Change that, that means that goes to a plus. And now what you're looking at is negative 4 plus a positive 10. Those are different signs. Keep the sign of the larger, that's why this is positive, and then subtract 4 from 10. So 8 minus a negative 6. Keep, change, change. This is plain old 8 plus 6, which is 14. You will notice sometimes on these problems the second number is in parentheses. It doesn't mean anything fancy. I think it's just a way to visually distinguish that from that. It's still an idea that keep, change, change. Keep the 11, change that, change that. That also is plain old 11 plus 3, which is 14. Keep, change, change. 3 plus 9 is 12. Keep, change, change. This is a negative 3 plus a positive 3. Those are going to cancel out, and we get 0. Keep the negative 6, change, change. Negative 6 plus 7 is 1.